Hey, welcome back. This is the second video of a series demonstrating LuckGrib on the Mac. I want to slowly introduce features and try and make the learning process a little bit easier. So in the previous video, which I'll link, I discussed downloading weather files in a fairly basic way. So in this video, I want to show how to read these weather files, read the information in them. So the first thing I'll do is update the weather. I'll be looking at the area around Florida in this example. So there's a previous file I downloaded in the earlier video, and I want to get fresh data. So I go over to the file, hold down the control button, and select Update File. And there's the fresh weather data. So in the previous video, I showed briefly how to change the grib time, which is the forecast time, which is shown on the screen. And you slide the little bar back and forth. You can also use the keyboard left and right arrow buttons as a way of doing that. And there's some controls in the timeline as well. And as the grib time moves, the text also updates in a very simple way. You'll see that if you start using the program. There's no real surprise there. So what I didn't cover in much detail in the previous video was this bottom area where you have different combinations of draw styles. So this file contains sea level pressure, wind at 10 meters, which is the surface pretty much, wind gusts, and rain. And I've chosen different combinations for these styles, and you can click on one of these lines to quickly change the system into showing those parameters. And depending upon what your preferences are, you can choose different ways to view the file. That's pretty simple. As you download files which contain different parameters, you'll see different combinations appearing here. One I like quite a lot is looking at the wind, rain, and pressure at the same time. So we see how to change the time and read the weather visually and through text. And the other major way of looking at the weather is at a point through time. If you know you're going to be at some location, it's useful to be able to look at the conditions at that location through the forecast interval. And what that's called is a meteogram. So meteograms can be brought up in two ways. There's a little button in the toolbar over here, which will bring up a meteogram, and the other way is to hit the little button in the grib text window over here. Meteograms they have different rows for all the parameters in the file, and they show the values of the weather data over time. So in this case, we have, let me just make this a little bit smaller, move it down a little. There's a little cursor here, which appears, a crosshair, and what this is showing is the weather conditions at this point under the crosshair through all of the data in the file. So looking at this quickly, we can see, what do we see? Oh, it's starting to rain over here. There's a lot of rain accumulating. Let's see if we can find that. That's quite for... It's going to rain over there too. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. So yeah, this is a useful tool for being able to look at the weather data. So the weather data in a file can be done both visually as well as visually for a whole area, which is useful for seeing patterns, as well as at a point, which is useful for looking at the forecast where you may be at for the whole interval. So for example, if you're anchored somewhere, you can look at the meteogram for that point and see what to expect while you're anchored, which is really useful. Let's see, I'll try and keep this fairly short. It's also useful to look at the file in a little more detail. So in the previous video, when I was showing how to download weather data, we went through some of the options, and one of the options was the file resolution. And this file is from a weather model called GFS, the Global Forecast System, and the minimum resolution, or the highest resolution, is 1/4 of a degree. And you can see it's easy to try and interpret this weather data more than you should. So the system helps you show you the points in this file which are actually part of the data, and there's a lot of interpolations between these points which the system is using to make the appearance of the file more pleasing. So if you look closely, there's little dots, little rectangles at the base of these wind barbs, and these dots indicate that that point is part of the weather forecast data. That's an actual point from the weather model. So this wind barb is the weather model saying what the wind speed and direction is there. There's another wind barb, and the model is telling us what the weather is at that point. And in between, LuckGrib is interpolating. And in this case, because both these wind barbs are generally in the same direction, the interpolations will be quite accurate. When you find areas where there's a large change between these dots, you need to be a bit careful about what happens in between. So if you find one wind dot where the winds were westerly and another dot where they're easterly, then in between those two, there's the system will be interpolating. It'll be showing you something, but you need to be careful about what that is. If that's important for what your plans are, you should just be aware that the interpolations are a reasonable guess of what may be happening, but that's not the weather model saying those. So yeah, there's wind dots. You should be looking at those. And I think that's pretty much it. I'll show you one more thing, going back to these combinations. So these rows, or these draw style presets, are showing you different combinations of these draw styles. And there's actually a draw style editor in the toolbar right here. And what this is showing is, and I'll just tear that off, there's a little line on top you can grab and drag down. So as you change the presets, it's turning on and off these different styles. And if you go through and turn them on yourself, you can turn them all on, which ends up being pretty confusing. But if you find some combination of these things, which you want to see frequently, which isn't part of this list, then you could go through and turn on the styles you want to see, and then you could give it your own name that combination, and it'll appear in this left-hand area. But I don't want to do that now. And this is more useful when you start downloading other parameters. So for most of the simple combinations where you have wind, surface wind, and sea level pressure and rain, the combinations on the left-hand side here are pretty useful. If you start to download, well, I don't know, reflective, composite reflectivity, a simulated radar, and other parameters, you may find a combination where you want to view those more rarely used parameters in a combination which isn't available. So yeah, that's kind of how the system works. It comes, depending upon the file you choose, the specific file only contains sea level pressure and wind, and there are fewer styles available and fewer entries in this list on the left. So yeah, that's trying to keep these in kind of simple and small. So I think I'll cut this off here. There are more videos coming. Yeah, let me know if you want to see more content and what you want to see. And let me know if you actually are watching these videos by hitting the like button. And yeah, thanks for watching. Talk to you later.